In terms of world history, Greece is perhaps one of the most well-recognised civilisations when talking about this subject. You may be familiar with stunning sites such as the Acropolis or the ruins of the sanctuary of Delphi, or mighty mythical figures such as Achilles, Heracles or Perseus. But in order to talk about those Greeks, we first have to talk about these Greeks. So with that in mind, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you lads and ladies around the world, and welcome to our series on the latest of the Bronze Age civilizations we've yet covered, Minoan Greece, the ancient precursor to the Greece of ancient times we all know and love. In order to talk about Greece, however, we must first address a crucial factor in the development of civilization in this area, the Mediterranean Sea, that big warm bathtub of an ocean when compared with other seas on our planet that has played host to dozens upon dozens of different civilizations, political entities, historical events, and pivotal moments within the history of human civilization. Yet surprisingly, this part of the world began not as an ocean, but as a desert, an unforgiving area of land, scorched by the baking sun and practically devoid of life. This desert's existence was held in place only by a narrow strip of land where the Strait of Gibraltar sits today. On one side was the desert, and on the other was the titanic bulk of heaving deep waters known today as the Atlantic Ocean. And over the course of many years, this narrow strip of land was gradually worn away by the process known as erosion, where the sea, or any body of water really, eats away at land until it collapses into the water itself. And this is believed to have been what caused what is known as the Cyclades flood roughly 5 million years ago. Upon the breaking of this narrow strip of land, unfathomable amounts of water rushed through the gap, with some estimates at its peak placing the amount of water rushing through this gap every second at 100 million cubic meters of water per second. For reference, that is enough water to fill 500 football stadiums. It's no wonder then that some estimates place the amount of time taken to refill the Mediterranean of water perhaps took roughly a decade. And as a result of the Cyclades flood, the desert was no more. And you wouldn't be a fool in thinking that the higher points of this desert became islands such as Sicily, Corsica and Crete, small remainders of a once vast desert destroyed millions of years ago, long before humanity set foot on these coastlines. And the coastline in question today, that of Greece and parts of what is now called Anatolia, was said to have first been set upon by humans as early as 200,000 years ago. But civilization would not arrive in this area until circa 3200 BCE, in the form of the Cyclades culture. This particular early Bronze Age culture gets its name from an island group consisting of roughly 200 islands in the Aegean Sea, forming a very rough circle shape around the central island of Delos. This island group includes notable islands that you may be familiar with, such as Naxos, Mykonos, Paros and Ios. And the Cyclades civilization itself comprised in the early Bronze Age of small organised communities spread out across this island group. And despite this area's relative size, make no mistake, this civilization was surprisingly wealthy for its time, with the people who lived there having no shortage of food through their raising of sheep, goats and pigs, as well as the spearfishing of fish from the surrounding waters. As for agriculture, these people were known to have also grown barley, wheat, grapes and olives, meaning they could export two of the ancient world's most prized commodities, olives and wine. Sweet, sweet alcoholic wine. But the true wealth of the Cyclades in the early Bronze Age lay in the ground and in the craftsmanship of its people. Mines containing copper and lead were fully exploited across these islands, and as I've stated in the series on ancient Egypt, copper was an essential item in the functioning of civilization in the Bronze Age world. For copper, alongside tin, forms the famous alloy known as bronze, something as crucial to these societies and civilizations back then as oil, gasoline and coffee are to our civilizations to this day. But two more commodities that are quite unique in this time made the Cyclades civilization particularly wealthy in their exportation, that of volcanic obsidian and white marble. Obsidian was exported from this area across the Aegean and beyond, with its important use as a cutting tool, making it a rare and prized commodity throughout the Bronze Age world of this area. Marble, on the other hand, as it does to an extent to this day, served more of an artistic purpose, with small and detailed sculptures and figurines made out of these islands' white marble being found across this area. And I'll give credit where it's due, look at some of these sculptures. This civilization existed roughly 5,000 years ago, and look at the craftsmanship already on display here. It's no wonder then that the Cyclades grew fabulously wealthy through the exportation of rare commodities such as these. But with the beginning of nearly every civilization in history, there always eventually comes an end. But this end is quite unique, in that the end of the prosperity and supremacy of Cycladic culture in this region perhaps doesn't end in conquest or usurpation or some cataclysmic event. Yet. But instead, this is a story more of, I'm not sure if this is even a word in English, eclipsation, where the culture and way of life of one particular civilization surpasses and eclipses that of another. In this case, I'm talking about a neighbour and possible trading partner of the Cyclades to the south, that of Minoan Crete. Now, concerning Crete, archaeological evidence puts the first human activity on this island as around the year 3000 BCE, so not long after human activity begins to crop up on the Cyclades Islands. And a key point of differentiation between that of the Cyclades and the Minoan civilizations is that whilst the Cyclades existed in small organised communities, the Minoans were centred mostly around palace settlements. That's right, these guys loved to flash their cash. The first Minoan palace settlement is estimated to have been built between the years 2000 and 1700 BCE at Phaistos. Around the same time, writing developed on the island of Crete in the form of Minoan hieroglyphics, or as it is also known, Minoan Linear A. And these forms of writing would have likely have been placed upon clay tablets, like most other forms of record keeping and writing within the Fertile Crescent in the Bronze Age. And this activity began around the same time that the palace settlements began popping up all over Crete, circa 2000 BCE, for this was when the pottery wheel was first introduced to Crete, all the way from Sumeria in Mesopotamia. And yeah, the introduction of some old big wheel to make pottery probably isn't very substantial at first glance. But think about it, now you've got something to drink wine out of, meaning you can drink more wine, more water, and you are gonna flip when you hear this hot food becomes portable? And don't forget, this is still Greece we're talking about, so with the introduction of the pottery wheel to this area comes ceramics and pottery forms of art, something that this part of the world in ancient times is so famous for. For you've probably seen multiple examples of ceramic art coming from this region in museums far and wide across the world. And from this information about exporting goods, the building of these complex settlements in palace structures indicates one important thing: growth. And with the first palace settlement built at Phaistos, these palace settlements began springing up all over Crete in locations such as Malea, Zakros and Knossos. One of those you may have already heard of. And one of these palace settlements, I won't reveal which one yet, came to eclipse all others on this island, and has today been proposed as the inspiration for a certain myth involving a certain man and a certain half-bull, half-man mythical monster lurking about in a labyrinth. So make sure you join us next time as we discuss the height of Minoan Crete and its blossoming trade empire, particularly with the nearby powers of Egypt and later on the Hittites, and especially a certain myth involving the deep labyrinth of one of these palace settlements. So if you enjoyed this video, perhaps consider leaving a like and make sure you're subscribed to stay up to date on future releases concerning the history of our world and its cultures as part of the Grand Portfolio. For now though, I'm Lewis of the Grand Portfolio, and thank you for watching.